Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're turning the page back in time, diving into a really interesting collection of writings from the 19th century.
Yeah, it's a book edited by Lydia Maria Child called Looking Toward Sunset.
Exactly.
And this isn't just, one person's view. Our stack of sources here, it pulls from essays, poems, personal stories.
All sorts of things.
All sorts of contributors from that era. And they're all thinking about, grappling with aging, the later stages of life.
Right. So our mission, our goal for this deep dive, is to really pull out the key insights from this collection. What did it mean to look toward the sunset years back then?
What were the challenges? Sure, but also...
Yeah, what were the challenges they saw? Yes, but maybe more importantly, what were the unexpected joys? The sources of strength they found. We've got material covering, like everything from friendships that last, resilience.
How to handle hardship.
Right. The value of staying active mentally and physically. And even some, surprising takes on marriage and being single back then.
And Lydia Maria Child herself, she was quite a figure, wasn't she? A prominent abolitionist writer.
A real advocate.
Yeah. The fact that she put this collection together, it suggests people were thinking about aging in different ways in the mid-19th century.
It wasn't just seen as decline.
Seems not entirely. She appears to have wanted to highlight the richness, the wisdom found in those later years.
That's a great point. Thinking about the title itself, Looking Towards Sunset, it's such a classic metaphor, right?
Hold on.
What does it suggest to you about how they viewed aging?
Well, it immediately brings up the end of a cycle, doesn't it? A winding down.
Yeah.
But, sunsets can also be incredibly beautiful, a time of calm, unique light.
Sure.
So the metaphor itself kind of holds both things, that sense of ending, but also maybe peace, maybe beauty.
And Lydia Maria Child, she sort of touches on that passage of time right in her introduction.
Does she? How so?
She reflects on how people who read her earlier work when they were children are now sharing it with their children.
Huh.
And she notes, it makes her feel like she's been around a while, obviously, but that being a household friend of two generations proves her life hasn't been altogether in vain.
Huh. That's a lovely way to put it.
It's a quiet acknowledgement of aging, right? Finding meaning in that long view.
Yeah, and that feeling, it really sets the stage for the whole collection, I think. Because while some sources definitely talk about the physical changes, the losses...
So the inevitable stuff.
Right. But the really striking thing across so many of them is this active search for beauty, for purpose, for meaning within that time of life.
Not just seeing it as waiting for the end.
Exactly. More like, what can this period be?
Okay, that leads us really nicely into exploring how these writers saw life's journey, and especially how our connections, our relationships change over time.
Yes. There's that story about the two girlhood friends, Harriet and Jane.
It's lovely, but also kind of poignant, isn't it?
It really is. Their early friendship sounds so fun, full of hilarious nothings, with a running accompaniment of laughter.
Captures that youthful energy perfectly.
But then, life happens. They go down completely different paths.
One marries a storekeeper, moves to a small town, lots of family duties, caring for in-laws.
The classic 19th century domestic sphere, in a way.
And the other marries a wealthy merchant, moves to New York City, a totally different world.
Right. Busy, maybe more cosmopolitan. And their lives, their letters, they just stopped connecting.
Years later, they reconnect when they're older. And the text is really honest about how awkward it was.
Yeah, Jane, Mrs. May, she says about Harriet, Mrs. Gray, she don't know what to say to me, and I am just as much puzzled how to get at her.
Oof, that feels real. Decades of different lives create a real gulf.
It makes you think about trying to reconnect with old friends, doesn't it? How do you bridge all that time, all those different experiences?
They even had different viewpoints, like Harriet was apparently more liberal in her religious views, which kind of shocked some people.
Right, so the divide was there. But here's where the story gets really touching, I think. As Harriet was getting weaker, failing, Jane, even though she had her own burdens, caring for orphaned kids, actually, she made the effort. She visited.
That's significant.
She brought little treats Harriet liked as a girl, read to her, sang Auld Lang Syne, simple things.
And in that moment, that vulnerability.
They finally talked, cleared the air, confessed they'd judged each other based on hearsay, Jane thinking Harriet was stern, Harriet thinking Jane was flighty.
Wow. So they broke through that awkwardness.
They did, and the insight there is so powerful, isn't it? That shared history, that old affection, if you give it space, it can overcome years of distance, even misunderstandings.
Especially when facing mortality, maybe.
Exactly. The comfort of that old bond just became the most important thing. They remembered their youth, found some grace, trusted God was merciful.
It's a beautiful picture of friendship finding its depth in those sunset years.
Definitely.
And that theme, navigating difficulty and finding grace, it connects so strongly to another big theme in these sources. Finding strength, finding blessings, even when things are really tough.
Oh, absolutely. This is a core message running through the whole collection.
Like the story of the grandmother raising her orphan grandchildren.
Yes. When her neighbor sympathizes about all the trouble she's seen, the grandmother gives this amazing perspective.
What did she say?
She says something like, "The troubles of this life come so mixed up with blessings that we are willing to endure one for the sake of having the other.
Okay, interesting.
And then our afflictions do us so much good that I reckon they are blessings too."
Whoa! That's a complete reframing. It's not just putting up with hardship.
No, it's seeing it as tangled up with blessings, and maybe even being a blessing because of what it teaches you, how it shapes you.
And the huckleberry picking trip is a great example of that in action.
Totally. Despite being old, having all these responsibilities, just seeing the kids' pure joy, being out in nature, the text says it literally lifted her spirits, gave her new energy.
Her love for the kids, even the naughty one, Robin.
Yes. That's her driving force, her biggest blessing. It's that ability to focus on the good, the love, the joy inside the difficult situation. That's her resilience.
And this isn't just a one-off idea in the book, is it?
Not at all. There's another essay. The writer reflects on not being a favorite of fortune, facing what others called great misfortunes.
But they don't see it that way.
No, this writer specifically refuses to call them evils. Instead, thanks God for them, even for being orphaned.
Why?
Because, the writer says, it forced them to build my paradise within.
Build my paradise within. That's powerful.
Isn't it? So resilience, as these texts show it, it isn't just about being tough. It's a conscious internal shift in perspective.
Actively choosing to see difficulty differently.
Yeah, not as the end, not as a curse, but maybe as fuel for inner growth. Finding your own strength, your own paradise, no matter what's happening outside.
And there's a poem that echoes that too, something about sunbeams through showers.
Through showers the sunbeams fall, for God who loveth all his works has left his hope withal. It's that idea of finding light, finding hope, even in the dark times.
Okay, so if people are finding this inner strength, this hope, how do they keep that spark going as they get older?
Yeah.
These sources really seem to push back against old age being just passive,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. They are just packed with examples of people staying engaged, especially intellectually.
Cicero comes up a lot here.
He does, arguing that while your body might slow down, your mind, if you keep using it, actually gets better with age.
And he lists examples.
Tons of them. Solon, learning something new every day. Plato, studying right up until he died at 81. Isocrates, still composing at 94. Sophocles, writing tragedies when he was extremely old.
It's quite the list.
And it goes on Pythagoras, Zeno, Cleanthes, Diogenes, all sticking with their studies late in life. Gorgias apparently studied until 107.
Wow, 107.
The point isn't just, look, they could still do it. It's that these intellectual activities offered, calm delights that were seen as way better than physical pleasures or chasing status.
So the insight is that keeping your mind active wasn't just possible in old age.
It was seen as the best way to stay vital, keeping the spirit sharp even as the body changes.
This connects to that figure, Cornaro, who lived to be 104 and was apparently very healthy and active.
Yes, Luigi Cornaro. His whole philosophy was pretty holistic.
How so?
Well, yes, temperate diet, moderate exercise, that's part of it. But just as important for him was actively banishing melancholy, cultivating cheerfulness.
So mental attitude was key.
Huge. He really believed in always being interested in something, some kind of activity or work.
What did you do?
He was into gardening, farming, civic projects, writing. He got real satisfaction from knowing his books helped people live healthier lives.
So his example, plus others like Adam Clark saying, never let your energies stagnate.
Or Michelangelo working on St. Peter's model at 87, Haydn composing at 73, Linnaeus doing science past 62.
Even simpler things, right? Like Dr. Prince making toys or a father making birdhouses.
Exactly. It all points to the same idea. Old age didn't have to mean withdrawal. It could be a time for continued creativity, learning, contributing.
Whether it's grand or small scale.
All right. The core insight seems to be that purposeful activity adapted to your changing abilities is crucial for a fulfilling older life. It's about changing what you do, maybe, but not stopping doing things.
Okay, so activity is key. And what about richness and contentment in terms of relationships? The sources talk a lot about connection, but maybe in different ways.
They really do. They explore relationships beyond just the standard marriage model, though that's definitely celebrated too.
Yeah, enduring marriage gets some beautiful mentions. That poem, John Anderson, My Joe.
So tender. Depicting the old couple together, and that extra verse someone added, imagining them meeting again after death. And you have Theodore Parker's grandfather finding comfort just in the memory of his wife, or the old folks at home whose love has never grown dim or old. It shows that deep comfort, that history, and a long partnership.
And that story of the Dahl couple's golden wedding.
Oh, that's wonderful. The detail about them sharing an apple every single night for 50 years.
50 years.
It just speaks volumes about that quiet intimacy, the shared rhythm of a long life together. Beautiful.
But as you said, the collection doesn't stop at marriage. Friendship is shown as really vital, too.
Yeah, Wordsworth's poem, The Fountain. It shows this deep connection between a young man and Matthew, who's 72. They talk about loss, but also about their affection, finding joy together.
And those real-life brothers, the Cheeriables.
Right. From Dickens, but apparently based on real people. These warm-hearted old bachelors whose strong friendship with each other seem to fuel their kindness and charity towards everyone else. They're like a different kind of family unit.
Which brings us to that really interesting part about unmarried life, old maids and bachelors.
This is fascinating. The text just tackles the negative stereotypes head on, says the jokes about old maids have gone well nigh out of fashion and aren't made by gentlemen.
So, pushing back against the stigma.
Definitely. The main argument is that single women, they weren't objects of pity. Often they had active and extensive sympathies, pursued intellectual interests.
Like those sisters studying languages.
Exactly. And they were often crucial friends, confidants. Think of Charles and Mary Lamb, or Whittier and his sister, these deep, fulfilling sibling bonds.
And the aunt who adopted her nephews when they were orphaned. That counts as a stereotype, too.
Powerfully. The insight here is really profound. Your fulfillment, your ability to contribute, it doesn't depend on being married.
What does it depend on then, according to the text?
It argues that the human soul is placed here for development and progress, and it is capable of converting all circumstances into means of improvement.
So any life circumstance can be fertile ground.
That's the idea. Solitude, being single, it can be just as good for growth, for connection with family, friends, community, and for making a difference as marriage is.
Even that funny old maid's prayer ends up asking for inner peace, right?
It does. Deliverance from judgment, contentment within. And bachelors, too. Okay, sometimes they get critiqued, but you also see examples of kind ones, like the astronomer or the farmer who loved kids.
So pulling it together, what these different stories show is that richness in later life, deep connection, it comes in many forms.
Yeah, fueled by sympathy, by intellect, by focusing outwards, not just by fitting into a conventional role.
Okay, so as life continues towards that sunset, the sources don't ignore the harder parts, do they? The decline, the losses.
No, they definitely don't shy away from it. There's this one reflection that's pretty stark.
What does it say?
It acknowledges that your senses might dull, memory fades, even reason can falter.
That's tough.
It is. But then it adds poignantly that affections, our feelings for others, often stay strong. And it contemplates the deep mystery of why this decline happens and the even bigger mystery of death itself. Like in that piece, The Mysterious Pilgrimage, where the traveler feels the invisible touch of loss, facing an unknown path.
So it acknowledges the fear and the unknown.
Yes, but alongside that, the texts show people finding incredible peace through faith and acceptance.
Like Uncle Tommy.
Uncle Tommy sitting by the church. He finds peace just by accepting God's will, enjoying simple things, nature, sunshine, teaching patience to children, his wish for the sun to shine when he dies. It's so moving. Such simple faith.
And that story of Gottfried and his father.
Another powerful one. Their shared faith created this really special friendship. And the father's death is described so peacefully, looking at the sunset, feeling strength from something holy, rich in love.
In his last words.
Oh, thou blessed God. It speaks to this deep connection, this trust that goes beyond the physical end.
There's also that hymn by Milton mentioned. Well, attributed to him when blind and old.
Right, Elizabeth Lloyd Howell's Hymn of Patience. It expresses finding God closer when you're old and perhaps isolated, feeling nearer to the Father Supreme as earthly things fade.
So the insight here isn't necessarily about getting answers to the mystery.
No, I don't think so. It seems more about faith providing a profound sense of peace, of belonging, of acceptance within the mystery. That connection becomes a core strength when other supports fall away.
And that sense of peace, it seems connected to another theme we keep seeing. Finding beauty and contentment in simple things, in nature, rather than chasing worldly stuff.
Definitely. Think about Bernard Palissy.
The potter.
Yeah, the ceramic artist. His decades-long struggle to perfect his craft, it wasn't just about getting rich, though he did find success eventually. It was fueled by this intense love and detailed observation of nature.
He got ideas from squirrels and plants.
Swirls, plants, stones, yeah. His perseverance came from that deep, simple connection to the world around him, inspiring his art.
Cornaro fits here too, right? Enjoying his garden.
Absolutely. And the author who says they prefer looking at snow patterns or frost on the window pane to being in ballroom full of duchesses, rejecting the pompous vanities.
Finding joy in what's accessible, what's real.
Exactly. And the patriarch figure, surrounded by his animals, playing his organ, seeing God in nature, in the sunset, even in dewdrops.
So the insight is, what? That real contentment in later life comes from cultivating that inner appreciation.
Yeah, being open to the beauty in the simple, the natural. And it often seems tied to letting go of self-consciousness, focusing your energy outwards, like that phrase, devote my energies to the benefit of others.
That outward focus really shines through in some of the specific life stories, doesn't it? Like Aunt Marthy.
Oh, and Marthy's story is incredible. Given the horrific injustice of slavery she endured, her resilience is just staggering.
Pulled away from her family at 50.
But she never, ever gave up. First, she worked tirelessly to buy her son's freedom.
Amazing dedication.
And then kept saving relentlessly for her daughter, who eventually managed to escape north. These are acts of just profound love and effort, focused completely on her family against impossible odds.
And her community respected her deeply. Her faith comes through too.
Yeah, that line about the Jewish women who helped her. They are Jews, ma'am, but they're Christians. Meaning their actions showed their true faith. She found such dignity and purpose in her struggle, in that outward connection.
And then there's the quieter story of Dubois, the scholar.
Right, the palimpsest scholar, uncovering ancient texts by erasing medieval art, a different kind of dedication to intellectual preservation.
And his daughter Marceline, supporting him but also wanting to save the art.
It shows that loving family bond existing alongside this intense, perhaps controversial intellectual passion. It's a quieter life than Aunt Marthy's or Palissy's volcanic struggle.
But still meaningful.
Deeply meaningful. And it shows that even a quiet, scholarly life can have unexpected drama, like when his life's work gets stolen. It reminds us that later life isn't necessarily uneventful.
Wow. Okay, so when you pull all these different threads together, the reflections on change, the resilience, the activity, the diverse relationships, accepting loss, finding simple joys, you get this incredibly rich picture.
It's a real tapestry, isn't it, of what looking towards sunset could mean back then.
It absolutely challenges any simple idea of old age as just decline.
Completely. The big insight, I think, is that it's presented as this time with unique potential. Potential for reflection, for deep connection, for continued growth, even for finding profound contentment.
And crucially, that value, that contentment, is always located internally.
Right. In relationships, in contributing something, in appreciating the simple stuff, not in the external marker status, wealth that might have seemed more important earlier in life.
And that idea of finding blessings, finding beauty even in the hard times, that feels like the most powerful recurring message.
It really does. It resonates with that quote from Miss Mullock, doesn't it? Seeing growing old, not as something awful, but as a natural phase.
With its own compensations.
Yeah, like a ripened intellect, a deeper understanding of things.
It really seems these voices from the past, they saw the sunset years as a time when the really fundamental things, love, faith, nature, learning, contributing, could actually shine more clearly.
Like a gentler but maybe purer light.
A perspective that kind of encourages us to look towards our own later years, not just with worry.
But maybe with some anticipation. For the unique insights, the quiet joys that time can bring.
Wow, what a deep dive this has really been. We've journeyed back, haven't we, to the 19th century, hearing how people wrestled with these huge, timeless questions about aging, loss, connection, meaning.
We really have. We heard stories of incredible strength, like Aunt Marthy's. Unwavering dedication, like Bernard Palissy burning his furniture for his art.
The quiet dignity of Uncle Tommy. The simple beauty of long love, like the dolls sharing that apple every night.
These voices, they really remind us that the sunset years aren't just one thing. They're not monolithic.
It can be a time of unique beauty, you're right. Deep contentment, continued purpose.
Especially, it seems, when nurtured by connection, by staying curious, focusing on simple joys, and building that inner resilience.
So, listening to all this, what does this 19th century view on looking towards sunset make you think about the possibilities for later life? Maybe even your own journey, something to ponder.
Definitely food for thought.
Until the next deep dive.